Hello, you guys. This is Josh Vision, and I'm here to give you my The Spanish Princess Season 1, Episode 1 review. So this episode, you guys, was pretty good, and it had like an unexpected turn near the end of the episode. So we start the episode basically post Queen Catherine and Arthur's marriage. So we have this scene in which they're talking about what to expect, in the future. I believe they briefly talk about Arthur's younger sister Margaret being betrothed to the King of Scotland. I think it's like James III or something along them lines. And him and Catherine talk about how England's been at war with Scotland for like hundreds or 200s of years. And he kind of calls them thieves, I believe, or something along them lines, like scallywags, like rogues. And Catherine mentions how she's well aware of the whole Scottish threat to England and how she would have personally crushed them, without any, questions asked. But I believe Arthur mentions that sounds very much like what his father would do or what Henry would do. They try to consummate their marriage, or Catherine at least tries to consummate their marriage. But Arthur is against it. It seems like he's like really hesitant, towards her. So once that happened, I was wondering why he was so hesitant. I was wondering, was it due to him feeling, the insecurities of the fact that I believe in the previous episode he mentions how Henry wrote those letters and how Catherine was really responding to Henry's letters. It seems as though, if I remember correctly, Arthur noticed the connection, or at least the attraction, that Henry had for Catherine, if I remember correctly. So it's probably more so insecurity. If it wasn't that, I was thinking that he was possibly impotent. Those are like the only two, things that came to mind. So later, like in the episode, basically the next day, we see that Henry and his friends kind of go to Arthur's door, and they kind of make fun of him, believing that he didn't consummate the marriage, which is actually turned out to be true. But Arthur basically tried to hide it, saying, "Gentlemen, I had an historic night. She can barely walk, blah, 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 blah." Henry wasn't really buying it. So later, in the episode, we have King Henry VII and his wife Catherine making a speech in front of everybody, with Arthur and Catherine being there, as well as Henry and the rest of the royal children. And I think Henry makes this speech about how, I believe, that it's very important about teaching the new generation, how things are ran around, like how things should be run, and the importance of family and all that crap, and country, la da da da, blah blah blah. So basically, when they're at court, they're having this dance off, and it's clear to Arthur again just how much Catherine is attracted to Henry, and how Henry is attracted to Catherine. And I believe it's not just Arthur that notices it; it's Catherine. No, it wasn't Catherine. It was it was King Henry VII and his mother. So another thing that should be noted in this episode is that Catherine literally goes on her knees and tries to apologize to to basically Aunt Maggie for her indirect role in her little brother being murdered. And Maggie's like so cut off by this, a surprise. You know what I mean? And she tells her to quickly get up and says, basically, she accepts her apology, but she can't say really anything more, and that she should have more like self-respect for herself, since she's going to be eventually the new Queen of England. So basically, after this scene, we have Margaret. And Margaret, like I said, like I mentioned before, is the younger sister of Arthur and the older sister of Henry. So she's being betrothed to, James III, the King of Scotland. So she's basically been taken to the room by Henry's mother, and Henry is basically in the middle of a discussion, discussing the terms with the the main ambassador of Scotland. Margaret clearly does not like this arrangement. She thinks the Scots, basically what Arthur thinks, like enemies, they're rogues, they're thieves, etc. But what King Henry and what his mother's saying to her is like, listen, this is the best way to make sure we don't have to spill any more blood. We don't have any of our guys getting gutted with swords or us gutting their guys with swords. Marriage is the ultimate alliance maker, and to stop the violence, or at least keep it at bay for as long as we possibly can. Like 200 years worth of violence has been going on between us. We might as well just use the marriage as a way to end the BSery. Margaret understands, but she's very independent, and she clearly does not like the match. And plus, I think there was something mentioned about James III being extremely old, and I think Margaret, around this time, is around 13 during this whole event, because Arthur was around 15 or going on 16 when he died. He's about a year or two older than Margaret, if I remember correctly, from history class. So basically, Margaret has this discussion with her grandmother, and her grandmother talked about how you knew this day was gonna come, that your marriage was basically gonna be an alliance, like an alliance, like dealership, basically. Like the alliance was gonna make peace and all that. And Margaret was saying if Katherine was here, Katherine would have killed the old man by herself. So after that, we see her have a discussion with Katherine, and she was saying to Katherine, how can you be so calm and happy, basically being with someone, or at least being arranged to marry someone who either you never met or you just don't love, you don't have those feelings for. And I think Katherine said something along the lines of that she makes her own path or her own way, something along those lines. So I guess Margaret interpreted it as basically being like, oh, so basically the best scenario for me to do is basically to voice my displeasure instead of me just remaining silent and idle like most of the women in my time. Just say my piece and see where it goes. And maybe I won't be, forced to marry this old guy. Wrong, wrong, wrong. She tries to do that with her grandmother, try to tell her how she was against the whole marriage once again. And her grandmother was like, you know what, suck it up. I had an arranged marriage. Your father had an arranged marriage, blah, 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 blah. Deal with it. That's your burden to bear in this life, essentially. So after this, we have both Arthur and Katherine and Aunt Maggie's husband, Richard Poole, basically going to Ludlow. So if I remember correctly from the previous episode, King Henry VII's mother intended for Arthur, Katherine, to go to Ludlow to learn how to run a principality with the guidance of Aunt Maggie and her husband, Richard Poole. So while they're there, Arthur and Katherine finally get close enough in which Katherine and him reach this understanding in which Katherine is actually trying to make their marriage work. She's trying to actually give Arthur a chance, and Arthur finally relents on his insecurities of feeling inferior to his better looking and more talented brother. So they do get comfortable with each other. At some point, they actually make love to each other. Then they talk about poetry and how Catherine talks about how she actually respects the Islamic religion, even though she is a devout Christian. And they talk about something along the lines of trying to have the court return to the times of King Arthur and, the Knights of the Round Table, something along those lines. So essentially, while this is all happening, some type of sickness spreads over the people in the Ludlow Castle. So we have Catherine's lady-in-waiting, Lena. She gets it, and she's saved by the Moorish bodyguard who she's been having kind of a funny little relationship with, which you can tell they're both attracted to each other, like I mentioned in my other review. But, obviously there's a difference in status between them. But anyways, it's due to his care in a barn, ironically, that she's kind of saved from dying. But Arthur isn't. Arthur dies. And before he dies, he tells Katherine that unfortunately, once he dies, that his parents, especially Katherine, may see no use in her and may want to basically send her back to Spain. So when Arthur dies, everyone is shocked and hurt. And surprisingly, no one's more hurt about the passing of Arthur than Henry. And this goes to show that despite the fact they was always at odds with each other, they are still brothers. And brothers, no matter how much they claim they hate each other, they love each other. They both love and hate each other at the same time. So Henry has been hurt the most, obviously, from his brother's passing. Even more so than even probably his own mother. Well, maybe she'll be the exception, but whatever. Point is this. So the funeral happens, and Catherine makes it clear, well, Elizabeth, like, King Henry VII's wife, she makes it clear that Catherine is basically expendable, that she does not give a crap what happens to Catherine. So that's made clear, by the end of the episode. And Catherine is going to get tested basically to see if she's pregnant or not. So looking forward to episode 3, you guys. If I miss anything, write some comments below. This was a really great episode. I would give this episode like an 8.5 out of 10. What do you guys think about it? Josh Vision, adios.